Chris will do the prayer. I heard him say that.
I don't know why I'm doing this. Gets nervous.
What?
Nervous cleaning.
Clean out the table.
Well, we want to just start, if you have any questions, were there any questions on the minutes from the last time?
Yeah, but I sent the correction to Shauna, and I'm sure she's corrected it.
Okay.
I was. It was very minor.
As far as our lifting our work session, I don't know, can you hear us? Okay. Kind of.
We may take this off when we're 6 feet apart. Can you hear us with our masks on?
Yeah, you can hear.
Okay.
Okay, do you have anything particular? If not, we can move. I guess you all got the list for, like we talked about having a list for areas in the city that we could use some help with. You did not get that?
Did not.
Wow.
Some lists that we need help with. List. of some-
Well, let me see.
help
I got
areas.
it right here. Let's see.
I didn't get anything.
Did it come in an email?
Yep. I can find it.
Did you get it?
About a Hooper
Oh,
City
it was
coordinator?
attached. Did you get the agenda? Did you get your resolution?
What resolution? We know we got the resolution because you replied to the resolution.
Well, anyway, all of you should have a list of areas in the city that we feel like that if we had additional help, it
Came on,
would just ease the workload of those who are currently doing it.
came on Tuesday. Here's a copy of the mayor's thoughts on,
So it's in the agenda?
no, it came as an email.
Right, I got that.
Okay,
So
it
the
came with
mayor's
the
thoughts
council
on
meeting
came with the
packet.
job description, right?
Yes.
I visited your neighbor Peyton.
I can make copies. Would you guys like a copy?
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Hi, how are you?
How are you?
Good.
All I see.
Excuse me?
let's see.
Brad, I took your spot.
Oops.
So sorry. No social distancing for me.
Is it the one, the planner position? Is that what we're
My
talking about?
chair, and so
Yes.
Hooper City coordinator.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Oh, that's what you're talking about?
I didn't know that's what you're
Oh,
talking
yeah,
about.
we have that.
Of course.
Ding, ding, ding.
I thought you said areas in the city that need help.
Well, this is responsible for the different areas that we, when we talked about me providing a list of someone that could be employed that could, over time, complete these items. And you'll see there's quite a number of things that they could be responsible for. A lot of it would be on-the-job training. And so that they were actually brought up being trained for Hooper City, so they knew what Hooper City was like. And anyway, you can.
Yeah, I think,
We
now
read,
that I know, it,
we all read
we've read them in depth.
yeah, we all read that.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. We thought you were
It was
talking about something
misunderstanding
else.
what came out, so,
Okay.
yeah, I have a copy here, I've read through them.
Did you have any questions on that? Or?
I just have.
We got it. We thought we were talking about
You
something
got
else.
extra
Oh,
copies?
okay.
So-
I have copies.
I'll take one. I don't print them out.
here, I'll take one also. Just so you get wasted time.
Thanks for doing that, Sean. I got them.
So I guess how do we put all this together to get it posted?
Yeah,
You know what I mean? How do we get together as a body and say, here's what we want, this is what we like, this is not what we don't like?
Well, this is
Let-
what I
let's
think
get-
would
let's
be
get it posted.
really good, is if members of the council, if you came in and we did just take a minute. I know we couldn't come in as a whole council, you know, as a quorum, but we could go over specific things that we, areas that would just, would help things run smoother.
Mhm.
And for the most part, it has to do with developments. You know, so that when someone comes in and applies for a development, there is a check-off sheet that someone can actually go through and item by item, make sure all those things are covered, and we just don't accept it until we have it complete.
Right.
To date, that's just a little bit awkward. Sometimes they'll bring in sets of plans, for example, that they want reviewed, and there's things prior to reviewing the plans that need to be done. So, with this list, I tried to take it right from the top to the bottom. And with the end result of someone who's worked here for a while really would have a chance to progress.
Did you get the document that Chris Cave sent out? The, maybe.
The job description.
The job
A
description.
job description for a planner.
And I think if we mesh these two somehow, we'd have a really good,
Yeah, when I
Job
looked at the
application.
two, what I felt like is that a lot of the duties that were listed by you, Mayor, which is, I think, not a bad thing to create a deeper dive down on maybe some of the, I mean, this list seems like a lot of day-to-day tasks, right? What are they involved with? When I looked at the entry-level planner position that Chris had submitted with the, job notification, I think that in that job notification, I didn't see that there was a whole lot of conflict between the two. As I tried to review them, there was a lot of crossover on similar duties. I think that there were some lines maybe drawn on authority and ability to do things on their own, and which I think is not a necessarily bad thing. I think that most of our staff should be under somebody's authority, although it typically runs under the ordinances that we have, so the planner shouldn't be making judgments based on anything but the rule book that they're given.
Sure.
So that was, I have both of them here, and I went through them fairly in depth, and I appreciate you putting that together. I guess my thought moving forward is we need to get something put together. We need to get a posting advertised, and then the sooner we get someone in with the current, what's going on with the city, right? With our general plans open, all these things are going on, the sooner we get someone in and on board, the sooner that they can truly become part of what's going on, so that they do have a basis moving forward and an understanding of what's kind of involved. The longer we wait with that, I feel like they're going to come in behind the curve and not do what I think you were hoping would happen with getting on board and kind of learning about Hooper.
I'm not even sure that this would be a full-time job. When we had a position that we hired someone to fill last time, they were also the building inspector. And so it kind of was a combination of both, which we wouldn't necessarily do that here. I mean, I don't know, it wouldn't be bad if you could find someone like that, but so our building inspections are contract work, and I'm not sure that what we have listed here would keep someone busy full-time. That's just something we would have to.
and that being
look at.
said, I think you're gonna limit your expertise on what you find if you don't offer full-time position. You're not gonna get somebody that's qualified or.
I mean, not an entry-level person. You might find a retired person that wants to come
Yeah.
do some work on the side.
But you're not gonna find an entry-level person with a degree that's been through the whole education process and, and that wants to be a part-time employee.
So I guess my question is, I've heard from some of the staff, I know Jared is tasked above swimming, like he's here with all of his duties from Public Works. We have him involved in a whole lot of development stuff, which seems like your Public Works and your development doesn't need to be tied together. They need to work hand in hand, but in most cities, those are separate skill sets. And so when I look at how busy, or at least how much I hear how busy Jared is, I'm assuming there's several roles that could be moved from what he's currently doing to that position. And then I know that in speaking with Tracy in the past, our engineer does a whole lot of stuff. He's a contract individual, that position currently. We don't know how long Tracy will be with us and when the next engineer we have to bring in to train is. But someone needs to know a lot of that stuff that Tracy's touched over the years. Tracy was Tracy sat up here since inception, right? And talked about all the plans. That's not necessarily what just the engineer would do in a pure engineer sense. Because I guess when I've talked with Chris Cave and Ryan and different people, my concern is the longevity of the city. Like, how do we get someone in here that when turnover happens, we still have someone that understands things? And right now, I think, we're pretty tight on our staffing. You lose someone, you lose a Shauna, you lose Jared. I mean, we haven't spread those duties out. In my opinion, we don't have a lot of cross knowledge. So I don't know what that looks like for us, but I feel like it kind of handcuffs us a little bit, especially with our concern, and there's huge concern, right? People are here tonight, we're going to talk about growth and stopping growth. We know it's coming, then we better staff for it, because if we're not staffed for it, then we're just going to fall short. That's my thought. I think we got a great foundation, but I think we need to put it together and get rolling with it.
Well, I agree. So we have a foundation, and if everyone, feels good about that, then we've never had a job description to go off of, except one from another city, but that's not a problem with that either. But we'll use what we have here, and we'll just start putting them together.
So how do we post it? Do we put it on websites like Indeed, or how does that
How do we
process?
post that?
How does that process work? And what's the timeline we're looking at?
Yeah, so if you wanted to come up with a timeline, then we could probably start delving into the details of the position that you most likely want to create, including like qualification, type of supervision you'd like to see or not see in this specific job duty. And then after that, we go ahead, once we have like a legitimate job description with those items, we would then post it. And then that could be a discussion. Once we have that detail, we could discuss where we would feel like it would, there are some requirements where I have to post it, but then we could discuss where it would be most beneficial to post it to get the best applicants.
So what kind of timeline are we looking at? I mean, we've obviously got to get a final document together.
Right.
First of all.
Right.
You
So
know,
let's work on that. We'll
So how do we?
get a document that.
So what would be a timeline on a document? Let's start there.
Well, who's going to do it? Do you want us all to put one together? Do you want us to meet together and put one together? How are we going to do that?
If you want to go through this, and if there are things you want to add to, or things that you're not sure needs to be there, but no, I would welcome any one of you to come up here to the city office and kind of go through some things, get your thoughts on what you would like this position to entail. I don't know that I feel quite the urgency when you talk about a planner, because I think our contract work really is, I don't think we're, like I've mentioned more than once, the city is not running broke today. But there are those positions that hopefully we could ease some of the responsibilities they have so that Public Works could focus more on Public Works. There's no question about that, rather than having to spend a lot of time going out and inspecting developments. I mean, that is taking a lot of time, just making sure developers are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
One comment I have on this submitted form that Chris Cave submitted. I don't think we're a big enough city for I mean, that description that he put out for a city planner was, I believe, for a bigger city. And I don't see a problem with combining the two, but there were a lot of prerequisites, requirements, duties on that one that I didn't think, you know, we were big enough to warrant, so, personal opinion.
But they're all things that have to be done though. So who's gonna do them if this person doesn't do them? We're gonna contract it out to somebody? I mean, if you read through this, I mean.
It seems like the duties are still there, so
Right,
who's doing them
who's
now?
gonna do them? So like number 5, write developer agreements, land use ordinances and policies, regulations for inclusion in city ordinances, environmental guidelines. I mean, who does all that?
Okay, so
Now.
some of that is kind of pre-written, but to fine tune it, it's, Sean helps with that, Jared helps with that, and Tracy helps with that.
So this new person could take all those duties on.
So maybe I make a suggestion that next work meeting, and if we need to schedule more time like we've done before, but next work meeting, because it's really hard to meet without creating, you know, quorum and get everybody's opinions.
You have 3 of you, but you can't have more than listen to me.
But let's just do it in a work meeting. Let's do it in a meeting like this, and let's go through and develop this. It's like, I guess,
So are you saying a work meeting as in 2 weeks?
well, that's fine, or a work meeting in between.
But in the meantime, if each of you would put together some ideas,
Yeah, no,
We'd
I
have-
come
we'd
ready
have-
and prepared.
And,
Yeah.
and I don't have a problem combining the two, what I think is necessary, what I don't think is, maybe we could all do that.
Is that, I mean, is that
yeah.
amicable to, let's just say, because then we're together, we can have a digital copy, whatever, we can write it down, but then we can just hammer it out, and by the time we're done, like, I guess, when I look at job descriptions, right, and y'all work in the private sector as well as in the city, right, but I put together job descriptions a lot, like, I have 53 employees, we have probably 40 different roles in our company, and I'm responsible to rearrange, and not that I'm a pro at it, but it's not like rocket science, it's just sit down and it can be revised, right? We can, whatever we put together, it doesn't have to be like set in stone, it can be, this is what we're looking for, and maybe we get someone that has a whole lot of skill sets over here that we can utilize to help someone else, you know? It'll depend on what our applicant field is like, but
Sure.
I think we can definitely get it together within a half hour or an hour meeting tops, and come away with an article that,
If we have those done ahead of time.
yeah,
If
as long as
we're
it
prepared
comes
ahead of
up
time,
with our
so,
homework, yeah.
so I'll commit to that, that's not a problem for me, so.
So draft it as if you were going to post it as a job
Bring
opening.
what we think should
Well,
be
I'm not
essential
going to.
parts, or, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna
Essential
put together
parts
what
of a
I think
position.
needs to be there.
Right.
And then we'll merge those into what the group feels, you know, and I mean, I think getting feedback from Jared and Shauna and Tracy is an important part of that, and maybe we should ask them to,
Sure, and I think as you go down through the list that I sent out, I hope you could get a feel for that. It's not like I just pulled things out of the air. It's areas that they have mentioned that they could use help.
well, let's just put it
Or
in a
that
formal
it
document.
could be taught to someone else. Someone else could have that training.
Okay?
Sounds good, okay.
I have a question about what happened last meeting. So who is it, I felt like the meeting totally got out of hand. Because who is it that, after public comment, they should be quiet? They shouldn't be catcalling.
It's the sheriff.
The sheriff does, okay. So that was my thing, is I've been on the council now for 6 years, and I'm super frustrated with that. When people are catcalling, just talking over the top of any of us, it happened to almost every single person here. Now, I think there is a point of order there that needs to happen. Now, whoever needs to do that, I think that needs to be rigid.
Well, there's no question. There needs to be a code of conduct whenever we have a meeting like this. And, you know, the best way is by example. And I think our code of conduct, how we act up here, has a big effect on that too.
Do we follow, my understanding was we follow a loose form of Robert's rule, is that correct as a government? body, or what is our code of conduct or code of procedure in this meeting?
Well, I guess you could call Robert's Rules, there's a lot more to Robert's Rules than what we ever
Oh,
do here.
we don't even
but-
precisely follow it, I know,
But the main thing is that there's just respect, you know, and, in fact, you know, our last meeting, I was called as a point of order, and I've never really understood what that point was. But it began up here.
Well, and my
And
question
so-
was, based on that point of order, I mean, so that the chairman, right, or the person conducting the meeting was you. I was calling a point of order on you. And
And what does that mean?
you were able to
I'm
just
not-
go, so my concern was that we have an agenda, and my understanding is once the agenda is written, we should stay to the agenda. And so if we're entering a public comment period of time, narration prior to addressing the issue that we were going to address that was on the agenda, prior to that comment, seemed out of order. So my point was, why are we talking about this way over here? Why don't we talk about it when it's on the agenda item? It wasn't that you were out of line to share the information. The information was very valuable. But I think that, so if I come in with my own narrative, right, and I want to say, hey, this is my plan, right? If I do that before a public comment, right, then what I said becomes very valuable in the public's eyes. And so instead of allowing the public to voice why they were there in the first place before the agenda items, you can change the feel of that meeting, right? Now, if it was on the agenda, we're gonna roll out and we're gonna talk about what opening the general plan is, how that impacts us, then I think that's totally fine. But we were dealing with a fairly touchy piece of emotion last week. But if you give a narrative prior to public comment and prior to before that agenda item exists, I feel like it's like, all right, it's kind of like light a match, and then let's see what happens. And then by the time you get to the discussing it, the flame was like, it was hot. It was super hot.
So in 5 words or less, Chris, what was your point of order?
That,
What would-
that the discussion about the item coming up on the agenda should have been held when the agenda item was there.
Okay, so in that case, so I can say point of order at any time if I think someone or something is not happening the way it should. How should that be addressed?
That was my question, because I don't know, I mean,
Okay.
in a typical body, you have a parliamentarian that would say, yay or nay, this is what
Okay,
it is.
so let the attorney answer that.
Well, if it's a matter of following the agenda, I think you need to clearly do that. And I don't know that I'm the referee, or our officer's the referee, or the mayor's the referee, I don't know. If it's a point of order, I think the most common thing I've seen over the years is somebody wanting in the public comment area to come in and have you resolve their problem. And you can't really come in and have a major issue addressed in front of the council unless it's on the agenda. That's the whole public meeting concept, because people might want to say things on both sides, need to have notice of that. So somebody making a public comment about something they want a resolution on may generate a future point on your agenda, but you shouldn't bring it up and discuss it now. But that's a general.
So, I've just talked to a few other city council, people that serve on city councils, and they'll use stuff, for example, I'd like to suspend the rules and ask a question, because you're breaking away from the general structure of the meeting, right? So, obviously, look, we don't try to run at that level, but what concerns me is when we get to items that are a little more heated, the best way to continue to create decorum is to have rules. Because otherwise it becomes, well, who's in charge and who's gonna voice their concern the most? But if there's rules in place, then you're able to say, hey, I feel like there's an issue here, and if there's not, or if there's not a second, I wanna table something and no one seconds it,
Okay, so my question hasn't been answered yet. So he said, point of order. How should that have been
The
addressed?
chairman would have to address that.
Okay,
And if
So-
he needs help from someone, the officer, from the attorney, he can answer that.
okay.
So the way I addressed it was, what was your point? So, and I really, just so for clarification, so it's crystal clear, I don't want there to be any misunderstanding. I looked at it as though, whether it was in a commission meeting or a council meeting, if you're going to talk about something, you usually have someone come up and talk about their subdivision. whatever it is they're applying, maybe they're oversized structure. I don't know that everybody there really understood what we were there for. And so it was to lay a foundation as to why we were there. Because it was important, just like you said, it was a critically important meeting.
So your point of order was, it was okay for him to say that, it just wasn't the time for him to say
Yeah,
that.
I'm wrong a lot, but my belief system is that if you're going to talk about an agenda item and give background or whatever, that's when we're at the item. Like, that's when it's our time to say, hey, here's my feelings on this, and this is why. And the mayor has all right in this meeting to give his feelings on, hey, all right, we're gonna talk about resolution 3.625. Let me give you some background, citizens. Here's what we're gonna talk about. This is what's going on.
Okay,
But if you
understand.
jump ahead to that, to me, what it does is and you know, we use the word narrative a lot in today's world, but what it does is it paints a narrative that then people base an opinion off what the mayor said, and everything else, in my opinion, at that point can be disregarded because they've already zoned in on what was said here.
And on top of that, the meeting got out of hand right off. So the mayor started off and saying this stuff, and then Chris said point of order, and he felt like it was out of line, and then the crowd started in. Well, let him talk, let him speak.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think
so-
if you're talking issues with the crowd, I think we ought to have your officer right up here. Because I think if they start catcalling, if they get out of line, all he has to do is stand up. And I think that'll.
And Mayor, just so you know,
Come on.
we're at our time for the meeting. So my belief system is, and I could be totally wrong, and I told Cindy Councilman Cox this the other night, like I said, you know, Cindy, I love you, because my point is,
I don't
right?
like to be condescended to either, just so you know.
Yeah, no, but my point is that I think when we're in these meetings, like, we should have opinions. Like, I hate when I come to a meeting and there's no opposite side, and because there's no growth from that.
I think every one of us have an opinion. Some of us just talk more than others. So I think we need equal time for those that are less
That
quiet
want
to
to.
express their opinion. That want to. Sometimes you don't. It's hard to get it in. So anyway, so yeah, I agree.
All right. Okay, I think that was a good discussion on that. So since it is 7 o'clock, we'll go ahead and start the Hooper City Council meeting for Thursday, October 1st, 2020. And we have asked Commissioner Cox to lead us in a pledge of allegiance.
Councilman?
What do you say?
Commissioner,
Commissioner.
Councilman Cox
This
leads
is
us
the
in the
commissioner.
pledge of
I've answered
allegiance.
the worst.
And then she'll be followed by Councilman Osler to lead us in a reference.
Okay.
Please repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Heavenly Father, we're grateful to be gathered here in this city council meeting this evening. Please bless us with thy spirit that we'll be able to have the best interest at Hooper at heart. We'll be able to think about others and be able to speak our mind calmly and be able to come up with good resolutions and good ideas that we'll be able to go forward. Please bless those that serve us, especially the Sheriff's Department, and please bless them to be safe. And please bless also the Fire District and those that protect us. We're grateful for this great country we live in. Help us to be mindful of thee at all times, we say in his name, Jesus Christ.
Well, thank you to each of you. With this part of the agenda, we'll just ask each councilman if you have any conflicts of interest or any disclosures that need to be made at this time for an agenda item. And it looks like there are a chance to review the meeting minutes of September 17th, 2020? You had a chance to review those, and did you have any amendments to be made or corrections? I know, Cindy, you mentioned you did catch a correction, but
I'm sure Sean took care of that.
it's been taken care of.
Is that the same thing I said?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay, so we would entertain a motion to approve those, the meeting minutes from September 17th, 2020.
I'll make a motion we approve the minutes of September 17th,
We have
2020.
a motion from Councilman Osler
I'll second.
and a second from Councilman Hill. All those in favor?
aye.
Approved. Okay, at this time on the agenda, we will open it up if there's any citizens' comments that you might have at this point that before we move into the city business items. Is there anyone that has any comments you'd like to make? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the citizens' comment and move right into our city business. Our city business tonight is the adoption of Resolution 2020-07. And this pertains to some zoning restrictions. So I know there's been quite a bit of discussion on this, and so again, to maybe explain to each of us and those who might be here, there was quite a bit of responsibility that was placed on our planning commission to come up with a plan to clarify these state codes that we went through over the past couple weeks. You know, there were two different codes, and I think there was actually kind of a misunderstanding as to whether we were using the name of a state code as the name, or was it actually describing what we were doing. And I know on the agenda, it was placed on there as though, I think we thought it was being put on there as though that's what we were doing, not that that was the name of the state code, because I know if anybody went to look up that agenda item on the state codes, then it took you to the wrong code. And so anyway, we went ahead and passed, you know, a code at our last meeting, and then it was felt like maybe that wasn't correct. So in order to make a correction, to make sure again that things are very clear, we had our attorneys come up with a resolution that we'd like to review tonight. But in the process of coming up with this resolution, I know this is kind of off the cuff, but I think it would be good if our, a couple members of our commission, we have Amanda and our commission chair Mary, and both of you, and even Bryce, I don't know if you'd want to come up one at a time or together and just to kind of explain. Amanda, I know there was quite a process that we went through in coming up with these items on the resolution.
Do you, don't we?
So do you have any questions?
Yeah, so I guess my question is, this is what I thought would be good, to go through the resolution point by point, and maybe we can discuss those things as we're going through it. I'm not sure
I like that.
if they should come up and give a precursor. I mean, I was in the meetings, I can help do that. I guess I'm just not sure how.
I like that, Cindy. I think we can do it amongst ourselves.
If we have
And
any
if we
if
have
we
a
have
question,
questions, we can
we'll
call
ask.
them. Yeah, how about that?
Okay.
How about we do that? Then they can.
And,
I do have, in case
maybe
anyone wants
most of
one,
you have
copy of
copies
the
of the
codes
resolution that
from the
will.
state.
What was that?
Could you just got a copy of
I have a
511?
written copy of both codes, the one that we semi-addressed last week and then the one after that, in case somebody wants to kind of have that handy as we look at this to see if it falls
So
in line.
sorry, did you have any more? in
No,
your
no, I
introduction?
think that's a good idea. I think everybody has copies, hopefully here, of the resolution that we would cover tonight. And again, this would actually take precedence over what was done over last meeting. Is that,
Yeah, I think it specifically says that.
It does. Very nice.
So this is just, there's no pride in authorship here.
You know,
What happened is, there were a number of comments submitted to the planning commission. They sent them in, and Brandon tried to put them into a resolution. And you may like them, you may not. You may want to change them, if you want to add to them, you want to deduct. That's the whole idea. The part that is probably important would be at the very end, the now wherefore, where it says that this supersedes anything you've done in the past. So this will be, if you pass it, this will override what you did last time. And it's not meant to prevent anyone from coming before this body with a request to rezone. But what it does do, if you adopt it, is give them some guidance as to what your feelings are and the planning commission's feelings relating in general to rezones. You clearly have to address them one at a time as they come in. But if you're a person wanting to rezone, to give them some guidance on issues they have to address and challenges they're going to have may be possible, and that was the purpose of all this.
Can I just ask a clarifying question, Reed? So, for example, if somebody, Joneses came in and wanted to do a rezone on a 2-acre parcel from one lot to say 2 or 3 lots, for example. We take the application, that goes before the planning commission. The planning commission can say yes or no, and then at that point, does it come to the council for us to say yes or no also?
Yes.
So if say for example, the commission said no,
So the commission doesn't rule on it, all they do is make recommendations.
right, okay, thank you.
and that will probably come up when we get to that point, because that's one of the points in the document.
Right, right.
So can we go through them one by one?
Yeah,
that'd be a good,
let's do it.
how do you want to do this? You want to start at one end and each of us take a turn?
That's a good idea.
Will that work? Chris,
Yep.
maybe we could start down there with you with the first whereas.
Whereas Hooper City is desirous of setting forth a general position related to rezone request during its general plan update, with the hope of being as transparent as possible to the residents and developers, and
So do we want to comment on each one of them as we go on? If we
I
have any
think that,
comments?
I would think so. I think
Okay.
that one's very clear. I don't see a problem with that one at all.
I don't either.
Whereas Hooper City has in mind the general health, safety, and welfare of the city and its residents, and.
Ditto.
Any comments on that?
No.
no.
Whereas Hooper City has in recent years received and approved a significant number of new rezone and subdivision applications.
Factual.
That's a fact.
Yeah, that's a
Right,
fact.
so we've just received many, okay.
Whereas the current general plan policy provides for an annual review of the general plan by the Planning and Zoning Commission and a comprehensive review every 5 years during a static point in time to ensure that the goals and policies of the plan are realistic, attainable, and consistent with the wishes of the community, and this cannot be accomplished unless land use changes are halted during the review process.
So my only issue with that one is the last sentence where it says, and this cannot be accomplished unless land use changes are halted. I don't believe that's a true statement.
Well, and I would say the same as earlier in the paragraphs as a static point in time. We've done it without that.
However, our general plan, I mean, that was taken right out of the book. So this isn't something we just pulled out of the air. That's what it says in our general plan book.
Referencing the
That
static
should
point.
take place at a static point in time. And
Okay.
I think,
So what is a static point, though? I mean, what,
well, that's what we're trying to make right now. I mean, that's
and we're
what
creating a
trying to-
static point, you're saying?
We're creating a
Maybe
static.
it's easier to say more easily accomplished rather than cannot be accomplished.
See, and I like that language better than cannot, because cannot means you just flat out can't do it.
Yeah, you could do it.
And
I like more easily.
And just for point of reference, when we did it before, I won't say the city was static, but it was not
Like it
like
is
it is
now.
now,
No.
because there was no R2 zones that would come up, so it was a total different, you know,
Yet there was.
Schedule then,
There was
I
R3
guess.
and R4 though.
yeah, there was. So,
So yeah, is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
More
Yes.
easily? Okay, I like that
Yep.
too.
okay.
So back, are we gonna go with the mayor then?
You want to read one, Mayor?
Yes, I was just making a note of that, okay. Whereas a substantial increase in new developments result in water usage, both culinary and secondary, that greatly diminishes available and financially viable water resources for residents and.
So my comment to that one is the city is speaking for private companies, i.e. Hooper Water Improvement District and Hooper Irrigation. Have we received documentation from those companies that quantify that statement?
Well, I,
Here's the thing, if had we received documentation, there would be no need for a study. See, that's the need of this comprehensive study, is to review the impacts that new developments are having on water usage, both culinary and secondary.
But we're speaking for Hooper Water.
We don't control either one of those entities.
They're private companies.
So that would become part of our study with them. We want to collect
But
information.
is that their
from them.
desire though?
But
we could
Well,
find
my
out right
discussion-
now.
We could
my
ask
discussion,
further
my discussion,
Mr. Zahn.
and maybe, Mr. Zahn, would you mind addressing this from the podium?
Is that not a true, is that a false statement?
Let him come up and ask.
Is it a false statement? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Or are we making,
Can you
a
better word it?
statement
Maybe
for
that's better
you?
what you're saying.
Yeah.
Would
Does
Hooper
Hooper Water
Water,
have the water to provide for the current growth in our city? Or do they have plans for that?
What we have tried to accomplish, and with Cindy attending our meetings this last year, it's been very helpful, because what we're trying to do is stay ahead of the curve. And by doing so, we have tasked our manager, Robin,
You said you were there a long time.
for Hooper Water, to meet with Hooper City, with West Haven, with West Point, and on a regular basis in your planning or whatever, to keep up on what's happening with you folks, so we know what's happening. What we don't want to do is have some big development hit us between the eyes and then say, oh, we can't do that for you. We don't ever want to be that going. One of the things that you do, I think, is send, when somebody, at least it appears to me on the board, that when someone comes in for subdivision in here, they're also sent over to us with the plans so that we are able to see that and say, yeah, Hooper, we're good with being able to provide water.
Provide a little survey.
And so we're trying to make sure that we stay ahead of that. And by working with you folks, it's much, much better. We appreciate that. Now getting back to this, yeah, we have concerns. We want to make sure that we are able to furnish the water that is needed for the whole district. And Hooper's only part of the water district that we have. And so, yeah, I think at this point, we're good. And want to continue to do that. As you know, we're looking at a third place for a well at some point, or a fourth place actually. And so we still want to make sure that we're working with you folks in planning to make sure that we're not going to get hit between the eyes without being able to do that. So, any other questions?
so is Hooper Water Improvement District okay with this language in the resolution
I think it is.
referencing that company?
Yeah, because what you're doing is saying that you want to make sure that we're involved and that we're able to
Okay.
keep up with with the growth and stuff. Yeah.
That's all I needed to hear.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Same with Hooper Irrigation?
Same with Hooper Irrigation, you know, I think anyone who actually owns water shares for ag water received a letter 2 weeks ago that said, we are now out of water. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that there won't be some water coming down the river. Hooper Irrigation has a very strong river right. No one can take that away. However, storage water becomes critical when the river quits flowing as much. So in order for the secondary water to maintain, which most people are interested in the city. In order for secondary water to maintain, then ag water is not used as much. In other words, if the farmers are if they've quit irrigating corn or wheat or, these crops are harvested, that water then is let down the canal and it fills the reservoir for secondary water with the intent of trying to keep that going till the 15th of October. But it is something that can run out. I mean, it really can run out. If all the ag people decided, well, we'd just like to increase the soil moisture in the land, before we plant this fall, and all of them took their water turns, there would not be enough water to go into the secondary system today. It has to go one place or the other.
So you're representing Hooper Irrigation saying this is okay?
I would say that's okay. It's
Okay.
always something they would want to look at.
Which I wonder if that's a conflict.
It's not a conflict. What it is what would happen is that Hooper Irrigation may see a need to try to get storage water, to buy more storage water somewhere if there was a need for that.
Okay?
Chris?
You want to have me read one?
Yeah.
I'll defer to our Crexter over here. Is this a true statement, Sergeant?
What is it?
Okay.
Do you have a copy of this? I'll just read it. Hooper City budgets a certain amount of money for law enforcement services, and a substantial increase in new development has increased the need for greater law enforcement presence, which may result in a lack of adequate law enforcement coverage.
Sure. If you're going to grow, you're obviously going to have to grow your law enforcement needs as well.
So does the sheriff's office have some type of a formula they use in deciding what you pay? And is part of that formula population, for
It
example?
is, and calls for service, and yes.
So you can expect if your population increases, you're going to have an increase in the cost of law enforcement, I
Of
presume.
course.
But
So that should answer.
would it ever be subpar to our current needs?
Yeah, currently, would it be subpar? We had 30 houses next week. Our sheriff's department, can you cover that?
Well, I know what you're allotted.
Well, and that's, I guess I was talking with Councilman Hill earlier, and so I worked for the sheriff's department for a little over 2 years on the contract, and then Councilman Hill's currently with them. And so our concern with this statement is that, the sheriff's department contracts out for us and for West Haven. I believe we have 3 officers that split 1.5 between the two for the most part.
I think it's 4.5, 4.4 or 4.5 deputies is getting picked.
For the, yeah, so with that, and we know that when a call comes in, right, you have to cover the call, wherever it's at. And there's been much discussion through the years that, our neighbor city actually tends to monopolize a little bit of those calls.
Hey, Chris, please come into your microphone.
That being said, the question, I guess, for me when I look at that is it a public safety issue to be put on this resolution, or is that just something that says, yeah, I mean, of course, as you grow, you're gonna have to add, we know as we grow, we're gonna have to add lots of things. But is it currently a public safety issue? Because that's what we're addressing is there an issue at hand today that means we need to stop all zoning, right? That's the question. And I don't know.
You're
And
obviously
the comment stopping all rezoning is not correct, so, and you'll find that out later on the document, so probably don't continue to say that.
What was his answer?
Speaker a little better, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So you're asking a question of me who is definitely not in a position to answer it, not with the answers that you need to have. Obviously, we need to talk a little bit higher than my chain of command.
Okay.
We appreciate Officer Chiklis.
But I can't answer that from the city budget. Without question, as our population grows, our budget increases, because population is part of that equation to come up with the amount of money that Hooper City has to spend. There's part of it that goes to calls, but the majority of it is population.
So how crucial is that this is included? I mean, I don't have a problem with the reading exactly the way it reads.
I just don't want it to be perceived as,
The reason,
because we're yeah, this is the reason.
this is the reason, one of the reasons.
Yeah,
Yeah, just talk just a little louder.
the reason that we're discontinuing some rezone allowances is because we don't have enough sheriff coverage. You know,
That doesn't seem like
That
one of
doesn't
the
make-
reasons.
that
I think
doesn't
some of
make
the others
sense.
have been reasons that we could consider, but this,
right. I don't know, it seems like we're okay on our sheriff's coverage right now, 4.2 or 4.5 or whatever it is.
depends on whether you get a ticket or not. You get a ticket, we're not okay. You don't get a ticket, we're not okay, so.
So number 6, we're not sure on. Can we
Let's
kind
leave
of?
a question mark there, how about that?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because that's, I hate to get hung up on one when we're moving along.
And I don't know if we can reword it somehow or just take it out. Anyway, number 7.
It seems to me that it's probably a factor overall in determining whether you have a property tax, for example. Because the time will come, if you have enough increase in citizenry, you probably can't afford to pay for the service you need with your existing budget. So to that effect, it needs to be planned for. But whether that's critical right now or not.
Yeah, I think that's my only concern is you're spot on. Is it critical now or not? I don't know either. That's why the question is,
Well, I think one of the reasons this was put in there is because our population has grown significantly over the last 5 years since we looked at this last time. And quite frankly, the budget has increased a lot over the last 5 years. So I think it's something that we should take a look at.
And I-
Because where will the money come from? mean,
Well,
where
I
will
think
the money-
a lot of the reasons it's increased is not just because of population growth. However, if you talk to Mayor Green, we've had this discussion numerous times
Right.
about the formula that the sheriff's department uses to create the
Right.
amount we pay
yeah,
to them.
we don't, I mean,
And frankly, Sheriff Arbonne told Mayor Green just a couple weeks ago that we're not getting the best deal. You know, I just talked to him a couple weeks
Well,
ago.
and the reason for that, the reason we're not getting the best deal is because our population's increased, but the number of calls we have not increased.
Correct.
So we're paying a lot for,
Call volume
now just
that we
Just
don't
don't
have.
take this to heart. We're kind of getting penalized for being good citizens. I mean, you get penalized just because you have a lot of good people that maybe aren't having as many calls as other cities
Right.
that would have as many people as we do. So it's a positive thing, but it can have a
Negative.
negative effect on our budget.
Correct.
But also, all of these points were submitted by someone as a concern. So, this is a concern. I don't know if any of you submitted your concerns. I submitted concerns, so I know we were all asked to submit concerns, so this was someone's concern that they submitted, just as a point of why it's even on there. So,
Question mark, move on.
okay.
let's move to 7. Is that you, Reed? No?
You're up.
It's me?
Yeah.
Whereas Super City is in the process of adopting and updating multiple planning documents, including possible land use ordinances related to future land use and elements of its general plan, and processing applications for rezone request, undermines the purpose of the city's planning process and
Again, I don't think undermines is the best language for that, because the example I gave earlier of a 2-acre lot being rezoned to 2 or 3 lots wouldn't undermine anything.
yeah,
I agree. And I thought, and we discussed that a little bit, that, you know, we're gonna look at them one by one
Right.
as they come in,
Right.
and yeah,
because you have someone that has an acre lot that ends up dividing in 2.
Right.
You're not gonna create a public,
no.
Right.
Probably just will slow down the city's planning process.
okay.
Is that accurate?
We'll slow down instead of undermining,
Instead of undermines.
okay? Because we did say we'd look at it by case, so,
Well, I mean, yeah, by law, we have to.
Okay.
okay.
You're up.
We're good?
Brad.
Whereas an increase in new development has the potential to significantly increase the number of people utilizing infrastructure and public services in Hooper City and
That's a fact.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a fact.
Number 9, whereas significant increases in the number of people utilizing Hooper City's infrastructure and public service systems creates undue stress on these systems, and Hooper City recently submitted a request for a grant that would be used to complete a transportation study. So the thing I have with that one is just the last sentence. I think there's 2 items there. There's 2 topics. So strike the sentence that deals with the grant. I'm not sure what applying for a grant has to do with preventing rezoning. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I mean, it's given a preface of, it's just saying, hey, we're doing this.
We're applying for a grant.
Yeah,
That's all it says.
because in 8, I think you were right, Councilman Hill, when you said, you know, I mean, it addressed the infrastructure in 8, and I think I'm totally fine with, hey, the infrastructure's under stress.
Yeah, and I think 9 kind of is redundant to 8 also.
And I don't think it'd be a problem to remove
The grant.
9. Well, do you
Okay.
even have
The
to
whole
have,
thing.
do you
Yeah,
even have to have, do you
Take 9
even have to have
out,
9 in there?
I'm good taking 9 out.
Because we're getting a grant to study it, so what's the,
Because that's basically,
Well, I think common sense to me would be if you're applying for a grant to study, do a transportation study, why would you want the possibility of increasing the travel over the course of that study? How could it be accurate? If it's changing, I mean, that's the whole point of this comprehensive study at a static time when there shouldn't be changes occurring. And I think this just maybe addresses transportation specifically.
and transportation was one of, transportation, safety on the roads was one of my main concerns. But I don't know that this covers that.
Right. Isn't there another one that talks about transportation?
Well, and
I want to say number 14.
yeah, 14 talks about unsafe
Oh,
developments for
Oh, okay,
pedestrians,
yeah.
cyclists, and such on the roads.
so, can we,
I think we strike 9.
I agree.
yeah, okay.
I mean, we don't have to make a motion to do that, but we're gonna present a motion of what this is, and if it's out of there, I'll be a lot apt to be happy, smile.
Okay, so those, if I count down
So
through.
why don't you just strike that one, but take that part about the study and add it to 14.
That sounds good.
It relates to transportation.
That
Combine
sounds
the two
good.
of them.
That's fine.
That's good. So remove. Add, let's delete 18 to 14, yes.
We lost Sean. He's tracking this.
She's right there.
Oh, there she is.
Oh, so me? Did you read last? So, whereas, are you ready?
Yeah,
Ten.
sorry.
For number 10.
People in the back can't hear, so.
Okay.
We'll talk from here.
Remember what you just did, so she knows. She's gonna do a new version.
So go ahead.
So we struck item 9, resolution 9, and took the part that says, let's see, that Hooper City recently submitted a request for a grant that would be used to complete a transportation study and add that to item 14.
She probably doesn't have numbers. Do you have a number, Shauna?
Yeah, that's okay.
Not now,
I've got it.
not yet.
We're okay.
She's amazing.
She's like,
Go past your fingers and toes are okay.
We're taking notes.
Okay.
Whereas Hooper City has received an increase in the number of complaints and concerns regarding the impact of a substantial increase in new developments on the city's infrastructure, public services, housing market, economy, general quality of life, and environment.
Was 10 and 8 very similar? I mean, that's what,
I thought so,
yeah.
I think so too.
somewhat.
10 is probably more
But-
descriptive than 8,
I think so.
so should we go with 10?
But, well, my question is, where are the complaints? I've never,
Holy cow, don't people talk to you?
no.
I get complaints all the time. And
Do
I,
you get complaints?
No.
Brad, do you get
Well,
complaints?
we're on these stuff where we don't really count.
Okay.
sarcasm does not help.
Well, we're the dirty dogs, you know that we are.
But we,
We're the ones with the small lots that everybody's always talking about, that we don't want the rest of Upper to look like. So how does that translate?
Do we have a, can we recognize?
So do the complaints come into the city staff though? Are there complaints that we are, like formal complaints that we receive?
I don't know, I think, every time there's a planning commission meeting, I think anytime there's public that comes, I think they have concerns about that. But could we,
And actually, the planning commission is where they hear most of the complaints, where we don't take public comment anymore, so,
we do.
so,
We don't take
well,
Mary,
if they've already had a public hearing on it, we don't.
We do.
from our commission
We
chair,
fixed
do you
that.
have a comment on that?
We fixed that.
It's gone back. Good.
We have two
Yes.
public comments.
Because there was
It
time,
wasn't being sarcastic, by the
Right.
way.
and it was just,
Right.
yeah,
Mary
okay.
Simpson,
Good to know.
4311 South, 5900 West in Hooper.
Would you just state that you're also chairman of the commission? I think that's important.
I'm also the chairman of the planning commission this year. In regards to your question, paragraph number 10 on this proposed resolution, where Hooper City has received an increase in the number of complaints concerning regarding impact of substantial increase in the new developments. We as a planning commission, each month, whenever there's a request for a new subdivision, and it gets noticed out to everyone that lives within the area that's supposed to be affected by it or may be affected by it, we every month have people come to us and voice their opinions 85% or more times in the negative, that they don't want to continue to see things grow and change, and we understand that. The reason that things don't get moved up to city council with complaints is because we filter them in the planning commission, and we work through them with them and help them come to grips with what's happening. We have adopted a position as a planning commission that we don't want to burden our city council with unfinished or incomplete items that are subject to a bunch of conditions. We want to send to our city council a clean recommendation. It doesn't have anything attached to it. So we filter through all of the complaints on the planning commission level before it ever gets sent up to the city council.
I can give you an example of a complaint I received 2 weeks ago, and it directly is public services because of the substantial increase in new developments. A citizen on 4,000 said, these trucks and their engine brakes, and you know where they're going? They're going down to that subdivision off 50, that is between 5,100 and 5,500. That to me is a valid complaint.
So why don't you just combine 8 and 10 and make one 4S, because they are kind of the same thing.
I agree.
Yeah, okay.
8 and 10.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, we couldn't hear that. What did you do there?
Combined 8 and 10.
8 and 10 combined.
So we're at 11 for the mayor.
Whereas the Hooper City Planning Commission and City Council need time to petition and obtain studies and research other various information indicating the capacity of certain utility services such as sewer, culinary water, secondary water, as well as roads and other infrastructure in order to effectively review and amend, if needed, rezone regulations prior to possibly approving any new permits for additional rezones.
I think that's well written. I like that.
Yeah, that was good.
Okay, the next one
You wrote that, right?
is short, and I wonder if that shouldn't be combined. Well, I'll read it. Hooper City's farming community and continual increases in new developments can have a negative impact on the availability and transport of irrigation water. That maybe ought to be combined with the one that was talked about on irrigation water before.
Right, with number 5.
Number 5, yeah.
so,
Yeah, can we decrease those and add those together?
Can we just combine those?
Yeah, so up to 5. Park.
Back to me?
Yep.
great.
Whereas accessible parks, pathways, and trails are an important part of a healthy lifestyle for city residents, and available land for future amenities such as these is impacted by a continual increase in new development and so based on the standalone thing
Right.
that you said come up in the meeting, it doesn't, but I think it's just like
That's okay.
all these others, it adds to, right? So.
Well, and Reed brought up a point in the meeting when, right now, at this point, those things are extremely important.
They're probably one of the
So
most
they-
critical things on the planet.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think that stands alone.
But I mean, I will add a caveat to that we create parks, pathways, and trails in conjunction with developing property. You know what I mean? We're not just gonna put a park out in the middle of 7500 West without development.
Well, we already have a plan.
But
We already have a,
but we don't follow that plan.
that's right, that's right,
That's a good point.
that's right.
It's a good way to add that in.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we don't create trails and parks.
You do it
Without-
the needs of the people that
Correct.
are developing.
Correct.
Okay.
So let's see what we do.
So can we change the language on that a little?
Just add some language to it.
Okay, and the planning process needs to consider the location of
Right.
these items, something like that. Is that right?
Okay.
Say that again, Reed.
The planning process needs to consider the location of these types of infrastructure.
Yep.
Mhm.
Whereas Hooper City has experienced a substantial increase in new developments contributing to unsafe conditions for pedestrians, cyclists, and drivers on an already narrow roadway, in addition to considerable increase in traffic, creating potential dangerous intersections and crossings, and
We combine that one, right?
Oh,
So
true,
we added 9 to that.
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
great.
That was fun. 15, whereas the city would like to conduct a thorough review of current impact fees and developer requirements to determine if they are sufficient to cover the costs of continuing development and the future maintenance costs it brings with it. That one's fine, I think.
Okay. Number 16, whereas it is possible the Weaver Fire District will be adding a station within Hooper city limits, and Hooper is desirous of determining how that may impact a future infrastructure planning.
What is the status of all of the, are they building?
They have purchased the ground.
well, not quite.
Well, that's what we were told. That's what they told us, and said they have actually now,
Well, it was, last I heard a week ago, it was hung up and there was still some paperwork that hadn't happened. They want to move forward with that, the fire district does. They really want that land, they want that station there, but there's been a little hiccup still, the last I heard, unless it happened this week. So,
Well, and I guess that's not untrue because it says it is possible.
it's possible,
So-
I mean, they want it really bad, it's just that land is very difficult to dot all the i's and cross all the t's on to get the money to them. I mean, they want to do it, it's just the landowner there is,
well, I actually, David reported in the staff meeting.
okay, well, so maybe it happened this last week.
No, it wasn't within the last week, though, it's been a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, it,
3 weeks ago.
Maybe 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm hoping it did happen, but I'm just saying, the last I heard, I didn't go to the last one because, and I didn't read the minutes on it because it was the wind, that day that little windstorm was, but, anyway. So, yeah, I'm hoping that did happen, but just telling you, it might not be exactly happened yet.
Okay.
Probably an accurate statement.
Yeah, this is an accurate statement, actually, the way it's written is
But-
perfect.
So I don't have a problem with
Yeah.
that.
Is that mine?
Yeah, 17, is that where we are?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Hooper City is home to several historic sites and wetland areas, and further research is necessary to ensure further development does not negatively impact these areas. I don't have a problem with that. I think that's great.
I was just curious what sites we're talking about.
Well, we do have someone that works for the state that lives in Hooper now, that they actually have started to map out historic sites, even though they don't always make them public at this time, because people go raid them. You know, if it's an area where there might be arrowheads and grinding stones, they'll actually have people go out and start digging up property looking for these items. But she, I think, may have been the one that actually said we ought to be more aware of that as
And
part of our general plan.
just a point of interest, I believe that's from our REP meeting. That's going to be one of the things that we submit. Sherry, do you have any input on that?
For
Or
historical sites,
for
right?
markers to mark those historical
But we don't
sites?
want them, so why are we putting markers on them if we want to keep them secret?
Well,
Does that make sense? I mean,
You put a fence around it, and then we're gonna make it.
well, you're not gonna put a fence.
Well,
The
so
wetlands
real quick,
applies also.
this probably sidetracks from this, but the discussion that Cindy brought up was when we met in our ramp meeting the other night, and we probably should have given you some update on that ramp meeting, I apologize, in the work meeting, we got sidetracked a little bit, but in the ramp meeting, we talked about supply, putting a ramp grant submission for monies to highlight historical sites, similar to what you've seen in Roy that says this was where the first store was. So I don't know if historical sites meaning some secret graveyard that we shouldn't have people in there digging in is what we're talking about more than, hey, this was where the old, Bible store was, and it was there for, whatever that,
The herd
Right,
house,
it's,
you know,
it's not intended
Captain
to.
Hooker's
so,
first
that,
dugout, things like
Okay.
that.
I don't have major heartburn with, based on
The way it reads,
the
I think it's
overall gist of what the letter stating, it's.
great.
That's
We're
good.
just including.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
This may be an improvement to our general plan if we actually look for these kinds of things, so that Hooper residents become more aware of them.
So you're up, Mayor.
It's a good question.
18?
Yep.
Whereas continuing to approve new rezone requests undermines the effectiveness of the revised plan by encouraging an increase in applications for new rezones, development, and/or renewals in order to avoid complying with a future revision.
So that one's a little tricky for me. I'm just trying to understand the verbiage. So if we continue to renew approved rezone requests, it undermines our effectiveness because it increases a need for applications for rezones? Does that read funky?
So it increases in applications and rezones currently because the revised plan may be something different.
Different?
So there'd be a rush to hurry and rezone now.
There would be
Oh,
yeah.
A mad rush.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's, the verbiage maybe should be, I get
I
what you're
understand-
saying.
I understand it, but you could be correct.
If it reads
I think
cursive,
rewriting
that's,
that would make sense, because I think that's exactly what it's intended.
that makes total
But
sense.
I don't read that.
So why don't you rewrite that one, so we,
Reword?
yeah, reword that one.
You got it, Ryan.
This one I don't like at all, because I don't understand it.
Well,
Purpose
just
is desires to ensure that
the
future
attorney doesn't
development
understand it.
and Use of land is not burdened by activities that are unauthorized prior to the completion of the comprehensive revision of the city plan. I'd say strike that.
Okay.
I don't know what that means.
We
either.
need Brandon's input now.
Well, I'm sure that was sent to it, but I don't
Yeah,
understand.
yeah.
So I had concern about that too, Reed, because
I actually-
I'm questioning what are the unauthorized activities
Why would we allow unauthorized activities?
Yeah.
in the first place? Right.
Okay. So no 19.
And are we rewriting 18?
Yes.
Yeah.
With Ryan's
Rewrite it.
words?
Just
Striking it.
so we
They'll
understand,
rewrite it.
understandable words.
Rewrite.
Rewriting it.
Rewrite it.
Yeah.
We're back to me. Whereas, as the city council and planning commission desire to work towards completion of the amendments to the general plan in a timely manner, and by keeping agendas clear of other items will allow them time to complete the review much more efficiently and in a shorter amount of time. And
I think we should just end it at timely manner and leave the rest off.
instead of giving reasons why.
Yeah, I have no
Yeah, that's the fine.
objections to
But-
modifying that either.
There's too much from TMI. We don't need all that
Overload there.
information.
I'm good to that. Okay, you good?
29.
Whereas the resolution shall afford city staff, the planning commission, and the city and the council sufficient time to complete a comprehensive study of the general plan and
Sounds good.
Whereas it is in the best interest of Hooper City and the health, safety, and welfare of its residents, if the city passes this resolution recommending a general pause in the approval of any new rezone requests until a comprehensive review of the general plan can be completed and an amended general plan is put in place. The only thing I don't like about that is any new rezone requests, a general pause in any requests.
What if it said a general pause in any request that adversely affect those items stated above?
Or some other language.
Yeah.
I mean, something to that tune, that, because I don't like any absolutes either, like I hate when
Well,
you,
you can't do an absolute all.
right, I mean, obviously 519 says no absolutes, right? So,
And while we're on that absolute, in the last paragraph, there's an absolute also. I'll let Cindy read it. But anyway,
Let him catch up on
yeah,
that.
yeah.
You got it?
Well, I'm not, I would put one in,
Okay. Well, wait, well,
So instead of saying any new rezone requests, either add language to it or change any.
Just take out the word any.
just take out the word any, because it doesn't say, yeah, applications,
in the approval.
yeah.
Just take out any.
Just take any out, that's fine.
Of possible new rezone requests. Or just take out any.
Take out any.
Just take out.
Yeah.
So
That's
pause.
simpler.
Yeah, that's not, pause doesn't mean you're gonna stop it, it just means you're gonna store it.
Now, therefore be it resolved by the City Council of Hooper City that Hooper City's general position is that rezones should not be approved during the time it is updating its general plan based on the above issues of concerns. This resolution is not to be interpreted as prohibiting the submissions of applications for rezone, but is intended to give general guidance to the Planning Commission if such applications are submitted. This resolution takes precedence over and supersedes any prior statement or motion voted on related to this topic.
So the absolute is that rezone should not be approved. So I think we should reword it to say is that rezone should be limited during this time.
I would agree.
And does that not explain 22?
Should not is an absolute.
Right.
It says, yeah, don't do it, right?
you
Yeah.
can't do it, actually.
So I think, yeah,
I think,
Ryan,
well,
what was the
I guess
word
I'm
you
saying is it's,
Limited. The rezone should be
should be
limited
limited,
during the time it is updating the general plan.
should not be approved.
Right.
Okay.
but I think there's still gonna be opportunities to be approved based on certain demands.
Right. Right.
Should be.
We know
Yeah,
that.
I think we can all think of examples of ones that possibly
Yeah.
can be approved.
And I mean, obviously, to be in compliance with the state code, right, no matter what we say here, they still have the right to petition us to do most of these things.
Right, and then the intent is if they do petition, number one, it'll probably slow it down, many won't petition, but if they do, they can specifically, in advance, know what they need to address in order to convince you to go ahead.
Right.
I think that's helpful.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So back to next meeting.
So do we need a motion to approve it or table it?
To table
I
or-
don't want to approve it until you get final language.
So wait till we
So
get final
we
language,
make
so
a
just,
motion to table it,
To
or?
table it until we get final
Just
language.
put it over to the next meeting.
Okay. Just table to the next meeting, or we need to do anything?
You can approve it if you want, but you're trusting that I can get
No,
it
that's-
right if you want it.
We trust you, but not that much.
Thank you.
So we don't need to do anything, basically, or do we need to?
I think we need to
Do
table.
we need to table it?
Carry it through to next.
Carry over.
Okay. Well, in that case, I'll make a motion that we carry over work on the adoption of resolution R 2020-07, zoning restrictions until November,
October 15th.
oh wait, we're still in October 15th.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
That's not going to November.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay.
Next meeting is gonna be an interesting one. You're all ready for that.
You keep saying that.
Well, if you only have one applicant, no problem.
Yeah.
Give some thought, you do have to invite everyone that would like to fill Chris Cave's position in and let them come in and explain to you why they feel they do a good job filling that position. Give some thought as to how you want to conduct it. You can listen and then just take a vote. Some cities have opted to take a private ballot so that they don't have to just answer. And I don't see anything in the law that says you can't do that. So give that a little thought as well.
Can we,
will we know who's applied in advance?
I think we'll probably get to, won't we get to read their application, because they're due by the 8th.
Yeah, so the deadline is due by the 8th, which 8th by 5 o'clock, so I should be able to get packets and information to you that
And
Friday.
that seat is a district seat, right?
It has to be from that.
3 to 6, yeah, in that district. Shauna helped me find a good map the other day, thank you.
Okay, we'll just move on to the last part of our agenda. There'll be another citizen's comment. If someone has something they'd like to comment on tonight, we'll have you state your name and address if you would.
Good evening, Travis Bates, 5008 West, 4950 South, over in the Landings. Mr. Mayor, council members, council. I'm glad you tabled this resolution. There's a lot in here. A full third of this, I went ahead and took some notes, have to do with infrastructure. It's under 8 different points. It's mentioned 5 times in there. And I'm not wondering why we can't boil that down and make it a little simpler instead of addressing the police and fire and roads and irrigation, maybe clean that up a little bit. I'm also concerned there's nothing in here around 20 or 21 about community input. We're talking about the commission that was put together, having input, the planning commission, the council, but there's nothing in there about community members having input as well. That was something that was discussed at the last meeting, is there will be plans presented, and I'll have a chance to look at those. So I think that would be nice to have that. Probably the third piece I have is, the last meeting when you guys passed this, there was some teeth in it. And I know this is a completely different document, but there's really no limiting what can be done with this. And my point would be, is the way I read this, and I could be wrong, that there's nothing in here that says every single rezone request that comes before you cannot be approved. This says if we ask for 100 rezones during this planning period, the way this is worded, you could approve every one of them if you wanted to. And I thought that was kind of a whole purpose, the whole moratorium discussion was to slow that down. And it's not that we don't trust you or that I don't trust you, but I think there needs to be some teeth in that. And that needs to be a little more well-defined and maybe quantitative as far as what we're doing there. So,
Yeah, that was one thing specifically that we had, we actually steered away from, is having a moratorium. Mainly because that would limit you to a 6-month period. You're just locked into 6 months, and you can't. The only way that you could go beyond 6 months is if you had some type of environmental impact statement or something like that, and you could do an additional 6 months. But the way this is, it does not put
sure.
a time.
And I do understand that. That was pretty much the whole point of that last meeting. And that's where the back and forth and the emotion came through is some of us would like a moratorium. So whether that be 6 months.
Problem is you can't do a moratorium.
Can't do
Okay,
it.
Still gotta-
I understand that, and it would have been nice to have you at the last meeting.
Still got,
So, that would have saved us all an hour and about 100 kilobytes.
That's the difference between state code 504 and 509.
here's a copy of the
The
statement.
last meeting,
You
we,
want this copy?
it's like the mayor said earlier, at the last meeting, we got a little confusion going on with the 504. That's what we thought we were
In fact, I
focusing
have
on.
a copy of that.
And 509 is what we're basing this off of.
Okay,
So you can read 509 and see
well,
what,
that's fair. So pretty much everything today negates everything we discussed at that last meeting, correct?
pretty much
No, it modifies it.
amends it.
So 509 actually, and the mayor had brought it up, and we hadn't really had a chance to dive into it. 509 was passed in May of this year, as the code, right? April?
It was,
Well, they amended it.
is amended, updated.
Yeah, so it's fairly
Put it in there.
recently how it was adjusted.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Is that my t-shirt?
Hi, Matt Molly, 6161 West 5950 South. I guess my concern tonight is that I think at first blush this sounds good and it sounds like we're trying to slow things down, but then the discussion is, but we'll entertain anything. And the example is used if somebody has a 2-acre lot and wants to split it in half. I get that, but I think we could quantify that as the planning commission has something better to go on than just, I mean, this doesn't really, at the end of the day, say anything. Because what it says is that, well, we want to slow it down, but everybody can still do what they want. And the city council can still approve anything they want, and I understand that's real. And we can't tell people exactly what they can and can't do with their land. But I think with the new city plan being reworked, redone, revisited, I feel like a pause to see what really is best for Hooper and its citizens really needs to be looked at, and this pause really needs to be taken seriously. And the rezoning needs to be at a bare minimum. If somebody wants to rezone their 2-acre lot, I get it. If someone wants to rezone their 52-acre lot, and then break that down to, well, we only want 18, and I'm not trying to get into next week's meeting, but that does directly affect me. And that's an example of, well, they have a chunk of land and they want to split it in half. So, my thoughts. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you. So there's one of those concerns, right? It was good to have it here.
But again, we're basing what we just did on 509. It's state law that we have to allow applications to still come in
Right.
and be looked at.
That
We
is
can't just say we're done.
And hopefully it will slow down to the bare minimum. It's my hope.
Any other comments?
I'm Kathy Lively. My address is 7353 West, 5500 South in Hooper. We already have a big problem with infrastructure, and I have been talking to a lot of people this last couple of weeks when they got their water bill. And for those of us who are not on Hooper irrigation, our water bills are just too freaking high. There is no reason why water bills should be, your water bill should be more than all of the rest of your utilities combined. And I do realize that Hooper Water has bigger expenses and things like that because of the growth that we're experiencing, but I think that needs to be considered because we got people who cannot pay their bills. And there's nothing in place. You can get a 3-month deal to pay them off, but I've been looking at people's bills and they're unrealistically high. And those people have like a little garden, maybe they're watering a couple of animals and their grass isn't all that green. So I think these things need to be considered. They said last week, or our last meeting, that Hooper is one of the richest places in the country, but not all of us fit into that category, I'm sorry. So You know, from what I'm seeing, you guys who are living in the subdivisions and stuff, who don't have a lot of ground, you have access to that water and we don't. And from where I live, we probably won't for a very, very long time. So if everything just keeps going higher and higher, I don't know what we're gonna do. And like I said, if you guys go on the Hooper community page or the Hooper Watchdog page, you'll see that this is a big, huge problem. And I made it a point this last couple weeks to actually look at people's bills, and I think that the price of water is just ridiculous for something that we need. So that's something I'd like you to think about while you're doing this.
Thank you.
I'm Raleigh Gustafson, 6911 West, 5900 South, also known as Sylvie's Well. When we applied to build our home for building permit exactly 21 years ago, they said it was very hard to get this building permit. And that was because there was not enough water to supply where we are. There's lots of houses and people at the same time that were trying to build in the same maybe 3-year period. They had to, instead of getting a building permit, they had a lot bigger acres, okay? They had to rebuild on top of an original existing home. They could rebuild or build, but it had to be on top of something that was already there. Now, that was a big concern then, was the water. Now, where did the water come from in the last 20 years? From the secondary water, I mean, I've heard a lot of things through the years, and actually owning some of the water in the aqueduct, I'm concerned about where our water's going and where it's coming from. But also, the last time I was at a meeting, which was a few years ago, they said Hooper has a population of 5,800 people. How many people do we have in Hooper now? I don't know. Does anybody have an answer to that?
8,000.
About 9,000.
9,000.
Okay, and what they said at that meeting was that we had that many people, 5,800. They said the city of Roy has 35,000 people, okay? They said we can expect expansion, I think it was between now, or back then, okay, which probably was 5 or 6 years ago, that we could expect by the mid-20s, 2020, the mid-2000s, that Hooper would expand to over 38,000 people. We would surpass Roy. They said Hooper is 11 square miles. How many people can it support? How much can you destroy the irrigation ditches before you destroy our farming community? I'm not a farmer. It's not part of my own advantages to say that one way or another. But farming is our community. Hooper is a welcoming community. People are moving here, yes, that have lots of money and it's very expensive, but the people that moved here and came here and built Hooper to what it is, they did not do that because they expected to live in a community of 38,000 people. Where are we going to put those people? That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Sherry Bingham, 4452 South, 5500 West. I just wanted to address the RAD grants, just real quickly, since you said you hadn't had a chance to do that. One specifically when you talked about the historical markers, if any of you have gone up 6,000 South in Roy, they have these really nice historical markers that say this is the site where the first store was or the first school was. So I don't think it's necessarily out in the property where they could do destruction if they, you talked about possibly artifacts or something. They're more just based along the road so people would have a general idea. For example, the Muskrat Springs, statue we have, it wouldn't actually be out in the field that's privately owned, it would be along the road, so people could see that. We did discuss in this ramp grant meeting to apply for a major grant, which would include doing pickleball courts, basketball courts, and a parking lot, with grants in the Parks and Recreation to apply for playground area that would be here, a playground set. Another small Bowery to have here, because we discussed how the Boweries down at the other park are always crowded all the time, and when we could rent them out, we haven't been able to this year, they've been rented. And then the third one would be to start on a phase of doing a walking track around the park. So it would be on this east side, since we'll already have sidewalk that runs adjacent to the restrooms and up. And then maybe in another year, we could extend it around the rest of the park. We talked about arts and museums. We already received a grant for Hoover Tomato Days with Gentry. They will roll over until next year. And then we talked about those markers. That would be the historical markers. And then the third one, possibly getting an electronic signboard out front, like a marquee that we could advertise upcoming events. So, you know, that's what we talked about as a ramp committee. We're going to meet again on November 1st. No, I don't know the exact date. It was the first Monday in November. I don't know that it was the first. Anyway, but if anybody's, they're always welcome to come. So just one other quick thing, Halloween Haunt, just wanted to remind you and know that, which is coming up on Saturday, October the 10th, from 6:30 to 9:30 down at the park. We always appreciate your help and support. We're starting next Tuesday filling luminaries at 6 o'clock, next Wednesday at 6 o'clock at the park putting up plastic. Friday we're pretty much there all day setting up the displays, and then on Saturday we always need help putting out our battery. We do battery candles now instead of lighting the candles, which seems to go a little bit better. We're hoping good weather this year, so we're going to start that at 3 o'clock. All of that's under the direction and approval of the health department. We've modified our hunt this year. We're not doing hot chocolate and cookies because that doesn't fit in with the criteria, but anyway, we're doing everything else. So thank you for your support. If anybody else here wants to come and help, we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Sherry.
Thanks, Sherry. That meeting's on the 2nd. It's the 2nd.
November 2nd.
Amanda Prince, I live at 1693 West, 5300 South. Just wanted to provide a little bit of clarification on a couple of things that were discussed. As those of you that were in the meeting, for those of you who don't know, I serve on the Planning Commission, and we met last week with the attorney, and people were asked to send any concerns for this document to me, and that I would type it up and send it in, and then the attorney would clean it up and draft the resolution. And so anybody that would like to see all of that documentation, I have all of that. We'd be happy to provide it to you. The verbiage that was in here was directly taken from the concerns that were submitted to me. As far as some of the comments that were made with the water, last year during the election, I took some time to reach out to Chairman Zog, who was up for election, and ask him about the current state of our water. He was nice enough to explain the process, and I had concerns as a resident because my water bill had increased what I felt like was substantially. And he explained to me that they're in a unique situation. Developers have gone to the state more than once telling them that they can't charge impact fees, even though they are impacting the community. When the developers put in their developments, they're in charge of paying for those main lines and things that go in. But as far as the other main lines, Hooper Water has to pay for those, and maybe Chairman Zog can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that cost is passed on to all of us as a community. So it does affect. And I mean, if you look at the current state of things right now with COVID, people are on strained incomes. I know several that are not receiving income right now. When you talk about these types of increases, it's something that does need to be taken into consideration. They have wells that they already own, but it's cost $3.2 million to make them usable. That cost is passed on to the rest of us. And even though we all may benefit from that, the truth of it is if the development wasn't coming in at the pace that it is, we wouldn't have that cost to absorb. The other thing, as far as the complaints from citizens, I have quite a substantial list. I've gone back through the minutes for the different meetings, from city council meetings, planning commission meetings. That information was taken from those, and that's public information. You guys have been to those meetings, so it's just as available to you guys as it is to me. I also have, in the planning commission, in my capacity as gathering information for this general plan, I've spoken to numerous residents out here who have voiced these concerns that were also included in here. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of clarification in case there was any question where those things came from. Thank you.
By the way, that was very helpful. Thank you for gathering those.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Those have been really good. Well, seeing none.
I have a question, Mayor.
Okay.
What other cities does Hooper Water Improvement District service? West Haven, West Point, some of Roy?
That's it.
That's it. So are all those costs, I would imagine, passed on to every one of those residents as well, correct? Everybody's bill went up equally. And I appreciate Amanda's comment about impact fees, you know, and that's something we ought to look at is, are we charging developers correctly on impact fees to substantiate improvements in the water system? I mean, that's a viable question, so thanks for your research on that.
My name is Paul Ott. I live at 6152 West, 4700 South. Some of the concerns are the vacuum system that you guys put in for the sewer. Are all the new subdivisions going to have the same thing? The cost, you guys told us that it was going to be a set rate. It went up. I'm concerned about the irrigation. We ran out before with all the new development and stuff. Is some of the water rights, is it going to, for water shares for the irrigation, or is it going to go to culinary water for supply for the city? There's just a few things I'd like to know. And last time we had the sewer rate increase, it was because of all the water usage in the sewer. And then we've heard that you guys thought about building a sewer system. And now with all the new development going on, where is that going? And who's going to pay for that?
Well, there are no plans today to build a new sewer system. That does not mean there wouldn't be upgrades, but there's no plan to build a new one.
They've already said, you guys already told us that they were backed up, that they were over usage of sewer on the old sewer system.
I don't know about that. Unless another councilman.
We'd have to have the engineer address that, I think. The engineer.
I haven't heard.
Yeah.
Not saying there's not, I haven't heard anything.
But that's good. Our resolution addresses all of those kinds of things. So that's good.
I just so, and I think people know this, but Hooper Irrigation that provides the irrigation water for our city, right? Provides irrigation water for multiple areas. Is that not correct, Mayor? It's not just Hooper City. So that water is run through a corporation, Hooper Irrigation Company, which has no connection to the city except for that we as citizens in Hooper consume that product.
It is a privately owned company.
And the same with Hooper Water, that supplies our culinary water. Hooper's in a really unique situation because we don't control our utilities. A lot of cities do. You know, Roy City has Roy Water, although they do rely on Hooper Water for some. But so that being said, if there's a concern with these different entities that are providing stuff to us, right, services to us, I think hearing the voice is good, but the reality is, if water's too expensive not to throw Mr. Zog, Commissioner Zog, or Chairman Zog under the bus, but then someone's gotta go to the Hooper Water Board meeting and say, hey, we need some reprieve. But remember, it's a business, so Hooper Water is a business, Hooper Irrigation is a business, and.
I know, who gets the share so? When a farmer sells off so much property and they have so many shares, do they split it with
No, those water shares.
irrigation? Do
No,
they give it to the?
Those water shares are sold. I own 2 water shares. I can sell them to whoever I want right now if I wanted to. They're sold, they're owned by
It's a
individuals,
deeded,
correct me
it's
if
a
I'm
deeded
wrong.
share.
Yeah, it's,
I know, to the water company or the.
Irrigation, that's irrigation.
yeah, that's irrigation.
So it's, yeah.
So where's Hooper gonna get all their water from with all this development? Culinary, sorry.
That's the guy to ask right behind you.
Or the Hooper's role in that process is simply, if there's a development, they go to the water company and make sure that they guarantee there's water to provide to that development, otherwise it would not be approved.
We can't approve anything unless they say, we will provide water for that subdivision or that house. If they say that, then we can move forward.
And Hooper Water has done a great job. I'll give them a lot of credit for what the water they provide. I mean, there's a lot of growth, as I just mentioned, in West Haven and West Point, that they're providing water for, other than just Hooper residents.
Yeah, they have good folks.
Where are you getting the water shares from?
They were obtained years ago.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for those comments. Maybe you could ask those questions after the meeting. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Are there any other public comments? Okay, seeing none, we will close our public or citizen comment part of this meeting. That is the final thing on our agenda, so we would entertain the motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. Thank you.
All in favor?
All in favor? Yes.
Aye. I'm gonna look this, because what did you read? So just pretend I'm your mother.
For voice of my opinion.
No. I think that was very offensive what you said to them. Especially.
Send it to her.
Okay, it offended me. It offended me. I thought, okay, I thought, this is.
Take care of that problem. I'm not gonna step in here.
We're just on tape.